you for coming out this evening. You all know that this event was on again, off again, on again, so I may as well address that. I love Israel, but I was never there as a child. The first time that I visited Israel was when I was 22 years old. The year was 2000, right after Sukkot. It was in the middle of the Intifada. Suicide bombers were exploding buses. My mother did not want me to go, but I was headstrong. That hasn't changed. I wanted to see the land that God has given to the Jewish people. So I went. I was shopping for books in Stematsky when the Sbarros down the block was destroyed in a suicide attack. Since then, I have been back dozens of times. I've met with many types of people and had untold conversations. Sometimes they're soothing. Other times they are upsetting or thought-provoking. Conversations. That is how we learn. The reflections and the dialogue which results from those conversations are the core of our independent thinking. President Eisgruber writes, "The emphasis on independent thinking is at the heart of a liberal arts education. It is a profoundly valuable form of education, and it can be exhilarating. It can also at times be uncomfortable or upsetting because it requires careful and respectful engagement with views very different from your own." This is a critical point. We bend over backwards to give free speech to all, and it is an honor to make sure that this ideal is upheld tonight. When it is personal, it is more difficult to be impartial. So it is with the relationship of many Jews and Israel. Personally, I am very proud of my brothers and sisters in Israel. They live in a complex region surrounded by hostility. We need to work toward understanding their circumstances and show support. We do that by listening. That is why I am proud to be making this introduction tonight, and I thank you for joining. Asking difficult questions is a part of listening too. To those who are curious, thank you for coming. To those who were a part of the rescinding of Minister Hotovely's original invite, only to attend, to listen, to ask, I applaud you. It cannot be easy to be kind and welcoming when disagreement runs so deeply. My respect for you has gone up a full notch. Thank you. I will ask you to give your attention to our speaker tonight. We've reserved a significant portion of time for questions, and I do hope that you use that time vigorously and well. Tzipi Hotovely is a mom. She's a member of the Likud party in the Knesset. She was actually the youngest member too at one point. She's an observant Jew, a lawyer, a campaigner for women's rights, a member of her party, Israel's deputy minister of public affairs, and a very frank speaker. Her views are the views of many in the land of Israel. Thank you for coming to hear her. Minister Hotovely, thank you for joining us tonight.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of all the students that made it and came here. I think that what Rabbi Eitan did was a real pride to the academic world. Is it mine?
It's mine.
I think that this is really a great pride to the academic freedom. And I think in general, we came today in order to speak, in order to create a dialogue. I would like to start with giving you the ability to ask questions. I think that one of the most important things that I want to start with, you're not getting academic credit for coming and listening to me. This is not part of your degree. You don't have to come here. But this is a full class, full of curious eyes, and you made it all the way to spend an evening with Israel's deputy foreign minister in order to listen. This is so impressive. And I guess some of it is also to ask difficult questions. And I'm here to answer to your questions. So before I start, I would like to, if you want, if you're interested, I would like to collect a few of your difficult questions about Israel, and I'll try to make sure that you'll get answers while I speak. And of course, we can have another session of questions after I finish. So whoever wants to ask, and it's okay if you don't, if you want to wait till I finish, is going to say his name, what he's doing in Princeton, and what's his question about Israel or just in general. Yes? Anyone is brave enough to jump into the water and tell me why did you bother to listen even though you don't get any academic credit for that? Who's the first brave guy? Please, what's your name, what are you doing in Princeton, and what's your question?
Hi, my name is Matthew Tripp.
Hi, Matthew.
I'm a senior here in Princeton, and I'm studying philosophy.
Very good.
So I wanted to ask about an issue which hopefully will be incorporated in some regard. What's the questions of how to think about the nature of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is certainly a weighty issue, and I think it's on the minds of a lot of people who are interested in hearing your presentation tonight. In particular, the question I want to ask about, in terms of your perspective, certainly there's a real question about the future of the West Bank and its legal status, including the possibility of its full political annexation into the state of Israel. Were that to be the case, there's certainly, among other factors, there's certainly an implication in terms of the demographic of the population of the state of Israel, assuming that
Just in general, you're asking about the solution of the conflict, the way I see it.
So I'm asking in general about the solution, and I just wanted to ask specifically about the implication on the demographics of voting in the state of Israel, if it were to be the case that all the people living in the West Bank were to be given Israeli citizenship, in terms of the possible threat to the Jewishness of the Jewish state, in terms of the implications for the Jewish
Thank you for your point. Great question. Anyone else? Please, your name and what you study at Princeton.
Hi, I have a little bit of a cold, so excuse me. My name is Ethan Marcus. I'm a senior here at Princeton.
Is it Ethan?
Ethan.
Ethan, okay.
I'm a senior in the Woodrow Wilson School here at Princeton. I'm actually doing some research on the relationship between Saudi Arabia and Israel.
Wonderful.
And I wanted to get your opinion on, with the recent kind of rapprochement between Saudi Arabia and Israel in a number of back channels, do you see that as a potential avenue for a future peace process? And if not, how do you then see a full approachment and a normalization of relations if there's not some kind of movement on the Palestinian-Israeli conflict?
This is a really great question. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, please. Your name and what you do first.
Hi, I'm Ricky. I'm a junior studying computer science. I saw that you made some statements opposing intermarriage, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about intermarriage in Israel and why it is that you're opposed to it, and how you believe that opposition should take form in shaping policy.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Abraham Wasserstein. I'm a freshman, hopefully going to study public policy and international affairs. My question is, what role, if any, do you think American Jews and Americans at large should play in giving their opinions about the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, and what role we should play in that debate?
Hi, I'm Iman. I'm also a
Excuse me,
freshman.
I didn't get your name.
Iman.
Iman?
Yes.
Okay.
Also a freshman, hoping to study international affairs and public policy. I came here today to get the other side of an argument that I've only heard one side for. And I was wondering what you would say that you do to promote dialogue within your everyday job, and how you try to implement that within the government.
Amazing question. Thank you. Anyone else? Please.
Hi, I'm Gabby Avis. I'm a senior. I'm studying sociology.
Gabby? Your name is
Yes.
Gabby? Okay.
I was wondering what your take is on the chief rabbinate. I'm not sure if you'll have time to address that, but if you do, I'd love to.
Okay, well, this is away from my portfolio, I must
Yeah.
say, as doing foreign affairs, but, okay. Last question for this session, and please.
Hi, my name is Michaela, or Michaela.
Michaela, okay?
I'm a junior studying history. And I wanted to ask about Mosaic United, which is
Excuse me? What?
Mosaic United, the company set up by the Ministry of Diaspora, that in October, Haaretz uncovered its plans to kind of release a database on all American Jewish students and names, and kind of general programming with the Israeli government and American Jewish students, and your opinions on this, and the Israeli government's kind of stance on that.
I must say, I don't have enough information about the program, so maybe I should read about it before referring this question. Last question. How many of you, no, this is my question. Good, but I'm so happy you're involved. How many of you have been to Israel? Everyone! That's great! So you actually can give the lecture here. Wonderful. Okay, I'll ask another last question about Israel. How many of you lived in Israel? It means didn't come just for a visit, but actually spend. Very good. So basically, I'm lecturing in front of Israelis. Very good. I hope I'm not preaching to the choir. It's a great pleasure and honor to be here at Princeton. I think that one of the most important things, being your age, and I was a student just not too long time ago, was actually this is the greatest time for us to think and to challenge many things about the world. And I'll start with my experience. I was born in 1978. Most women don't tell when they were born, but today everything is written in Wikipedia, so you know everything about it. So we can't hide our age anymore. So I was born in 1978. The reason I'm telling you this, with all the significant things about my life, this is probably not the most significant thing, is that a very major thing happened between 1977 and 1982. And because you're so well familiar, so you'll be active audience, what happened between 1977 to 1982 in terms of Israeli history. Very, very dramatic, very, very important.
Camp David.
Excuse me?
Camp David.
Very good, Camp David. And what's the official name? Camp David is just a geographic place where it happened, but what is the official name of what happened during those years? Exactly, not peace process, peace agreement. People are so used to the idea that peace is a process that they forgot that sometimes we even get results. So during the year I was a child and a baby, it was a matter of a fact that Israel could sign peace agreements with its neighbors. So we signed peace agreement with Egypt, our biggest neighbor, and some would say even the most dangerous threat those days. And at the 90s of 1994, we signed a peace agreement with Jordan. Many of you are interested in the peace process, so I think this is a good place to start. And different prime ministers from different parties, one of the things I'm trying to make is to speak around a little bit of Israeli consensus, not just represent my own party. And different leaders, Israeli leaders, were achieving peace agreements, valid peace agreements with our neighbors, with a lot of efforts, of course, but it happened. So Israel has a proven record in making peace agreements, not just with speaking about peace, not just by talking about peace, but actually creating the real thing. And the peace with Egypt, very soon, actually this coming October, there was supposed to be a big event about it, but we're celebrating 40 years for this peace. And the fact there is a proven record for having peace agreement takes us to one big question. How come Israel could sign peace agreement with Egypt and with Jordan and couldn't do the same with the Palestinians after almost 30 years of consistent effort? And when I'm speaking about consistent effort, I'm speaking about Labour Party leaders, Center Party's leaders, right-wing parties leaders. It means that it has nothing to do to a certain leadership. I mean, it's very easy to say this is a right-wing part of the government. No, we're speaking about over-generation efforts to make peace agreement with the Palestinians. How come it didn't happen, but it did happen with the two other neighbors? Anyone has any idea? I told you it's going to be very interactive. We're going to make sure we're not falling asleep.
They said
Yes.
no.
Excuse me?
They said no.
They
The
said no.
Palestinians said no multiple times to multiple agreements.
So
The
you're,
leadership.
are you saying the Palestinians are not interested in peace?
No, I'm saying that the leaders responsible for those peace processes rejected the offers of the Israeli leaders.
Okay, well, this is a matter of a fact, what you're saying. Actually, what you're saying is pretty much close to reality. Some people would say 6 times in history that the Palestinians refused to an offer to have their own state, but let's just remember the two last cases of 2000 and 2008. There were serious proposals, both, by the way, coming from left-wing leaders, and the Palestinian settlement. But my question is not whether they... Most of the people would say the answer that I'm waiting to some of you to say, but I would like to expose the reason I think it didn't happen. Why didn't it happen? Yes?
Both sides have a perceived claim to the land that isn't
Okay.
just tertiary.
This is the answer I was expecting to
Yeah,
get.
I thought so.
Okay, so we had peace agreement with Egypt. Israel gave back Sinai, and we had a peace agreement. So it means that this is not really about territorial questions. Now I would like to go furthermore. Both Ehud Olmert and Ehud Barak, who were the Israeli prime ministers who make the proposals, they both offered the maximum that was on the table ever. They both said, okay, Israel is going to take off settlements. Israel is going to go back to the 67 borders. I guess the audience here is familiar with this term. Israel is even going to divide the capital city of the Jewish people, Jerusalem. And let me share with you a historic moment. After the proposal of Olmert fell, Condoleezza Rice, who was the Secretary of State here, she was so shocked. She said, I'm putting so much effort in this. And you're saying no? She said to Abu Mazen. And in her biography, she writes, the reason Abu Mazen said no to the proposal, and this is a point I would like to expose now, because I think most of the time people are dealing with this territorial issue. He went back to Condoleezza Rice, and he said, I'm almost 80 years old. I wouldn't like to be remembered in my people's history as a traitor because I gave up on the right of the refugees to go back to their homes. So this was a Palestinian leader explaining to an American leader why he can't sign an agreement. The reason is the refugees problem. Okay, who knows something about the refugees problem? Who wants to explain me what is the Palestinian refugees problem? Anyone? No one. Okay, because this is something people are not talking with you about, right? They're speaking with you about settlements, about the fact this is a territorial conflict about land. But as I said before, if it would have been a territorial conflict, it would have been solved a long time ago. This is not about land. I mean, there are 200 territorial conflicts all around the world that are about land. But this conflict is not about land. And now I want to go back to the refugee issue. which I think this is the major issue that if the international community want to solve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, if anyone in this room wants to contribute to this, he should definitely ask the question, how come 70 years after Israel was established, 70 years after the Arab world refused to the idea to have an Arab state next to a Jewish state, how come, in the terms of the international law, you can be a refugee one generation, and then you should be resettled? This is the way the entire international community is dealing with all refugees. Think about refugees from Syria. They're going to Germany, they're going to Italy, they're going to France. Is anyone thinking or even starting to believe they're going to go back to Syria? Of course not. They're going to have children, their children will be German, their children will be, let's speak about some of the refugees from a war that the Arab world started in order to make sure that Israel won't exist on the international map. So those refugees living in Jordan, having Jordanian citizenship, living in Lebanon, having Lebanonian citizenship. And as one of my British colleagues said when he met me, I said I was going to a girls' school in Lebanon. I was asking those girls, where are you from? And they said, we are from Haifa. Haifa is a city in Israel, as you all know. And those girls have never seen Haifa. Those girls have never been to Haifa. But they see themselves as living in Haifa. Now, the idea about not resettling refugees, but actually making sure we'll have more and more Palestinian refugees is an invention of the UN. The UN, as an agency that is dealing with all the refugees around the world, it's called the UNHCR. And the other organization, which I'm going to talk about, is UNRWA. And UNRWA is singling out the Palestinian issue, making sure we'll have more and more refugees every year. Now think about it. You're getting a mission. Your mission is to make sure there are no more poor people in the world. Eventually, after 70 years, you made sure that you doubled and doubled the number of the people that are more poor in the world. Are you doing your job? Do you think you're doing the job properly? Probably not. So this is what UNRWA is doing. Now, UNRWA is using taxpayers of Americans, of British people, of some other European states, in order to make sure the refugee problem will remain forever. Now, around the year 2000, the debate in Israel about the peace process was over. Let me explain you why. Because till the year 2000, some people in Israel said we should do compromise about land, and some people said we shouldn't do compromise about land because this is a Jewish land. By the way, no one in Israel has a doubt about the question whether it's a Jewish land or not. This is a Jewish land. Judea and Samaria. Think about the names. Judea, based on the idea that Jews lived there for thousands of years. And cities like Hebron, like Jerusalem, are cities that Jews lived in a continuity for thousands of years. And the thing is that no one doubts the idea this is a Jewish land. But some people say, okay, let's compromise. Let's compromise. We're willing to do many compromises to achieve this very noble cause of peace. But after the year 2000, Israelis realized this is not about land. Excuse me, let me share with you my moments of challenging the idea that if we'll give peace, we'll get, if we'll give land, we'll get peace. I was asking Ehud Barak, the prime minister who did the second Camp David Accords, back then in 2000, I was asking him, Ehud, please tell me, what did you realize after being so close to finish the negotiation? So he said, unfortunately, Arafat was not willing to say this would be end of claims. If we'll do all the deal that was offered on the table, it won't be end of claims. And I said, so what was your conclusion? He said, my conclusion was that between me and Benny Begin, there are probably not too many differences. Benny Begin happens to be one of the most right-wing politicians in my party, the Likud. And I said, okay, this is where left and right in Israel probably meet. And he said, yes, the only question is whether we should do unilateral steps. Okay, so a new question was opened in Israel. If we can't get an agreement by having the two sides to sign an agreement from top to bottom, like we used to do in the first Camp David, when Menachem Begin was signing an agreement with Anwar Sadat, the Egyptian leader, maybe we should try a new thing. Maybe we should do unilateral steps. And this is where, in 2005, came the disengagement. The disengagement was an idea. If two people don't get along, what do? They get divorced, okay? So the Israelis and the Palestinians eventually don't get along, so someone said we should get divorced. And he said, okay, we're going to do that by leaving the house. We're even not going to bother to have this whole procedures and lawyers and stuff. We're just going to go. We're just going to leave the house, start a new life. This is what started in 2005. 2005, the Prime Minister is Arik Sharon, and he makes the decision to create disengagement in Gaza. And he said, if the experiment will work, we'll do the same in Judea and Samaria. As I said, I consistently call the West Bank Judea and Samaria just to make sure everyone understands this is not stolen Palestinian land. This is Jewish land that we were fortunate to go back to. And the thing is that this experiment fails. It's not just it fails, in a minor way. It fails not just for the Israeli side. It fails also for the Palestinian side. Now, believe me, I'm a mother of two small girls. The thing I would like to wish them is to live in a world of having 100% peace. I want them to wake up in the morning, go to school, think what they want to go and learn in university, not to be afraid even one day to walk down the streets of Jerusalem or to get into a bus like I used to be afraid when I was a student in Tel Aviv. I really want them to live peacefully. Which mother doesn't want that? But the question is how to reach that. I think this is the big question. The question is not whether Israel wants or not peace. The question is how to reach this goal, which is a very good goal. And the thing is, in 2005, as I said, Israel has decided to get divorced from the Palestinians, and it was a unilateral step, leaving Gaza Strip, taking off all the settlements, no Israeli soldier, no Israeli settlement, no Israeli Jews were left in Gaza Strip. And everyone knows what happened, right? But let me just give it to you a little bit in details. How did it feel? What people said about this engagement, the experts, the military experts, all the people who were involved in this project, they said, look, we'll earn three things. First, we'll end the occupation. Israel will go back to the international border. We'll have international legitimacy. Second, they said, Gaza will flourish. Gaza will become a Middle East Singapore because it has such a beautiful seashore. And Gaza will become a democratic entity because we'll give them the opportunity to have elections. Isn't it great? Give people the opportunity to choose their leadership, to be free to design their economy. It was supposed to be a really good experiment. And what happened eventually was this. 2006, free elections in Gaza. The Palestinians are choosing Hamas on a democratic elections, a terror regime, horrible terror regime, a terror regime that makes sure no one will have civil rights, human rights, all the great things your American people are being raised on. And those people, being oppressed by their own leadership, they start to use every single penny they receive from the world in order to build tunnels that eventually will end up in Israel, terror tunnels. This is after putting Israel in 8 years of terrorism by building rockets from all the international aid that the Gaza poor people get. So it was all ending up in the terror regime. The terror regime was transforming international money into rockets that fall on kindergartens and schools in Israel at the south side of Israel. There was a certain point that it actually came all the way to Tel Aviv. I live in Rehovot. This is a city that is 20 minutes away from Tel Aviv. I remember myself taking my baby to a shelter because the rockets came all the way to Tel Aviv. And this was the result from the Israeli side. From the Palestinian side, as I said, they got no human rights, no better regime, no future, no economic future, nothing. Have you been to Singapore? Anyone here? Well, Singapore is a beautiful place. And Gaza is very poor, but it's not Singapore. And the thing is that this thing made many Israelis to think again. They said, okay, agreements we can't sign because of the refugee problem. The Palestinians basically want to flood Israel with refugees that eventually going to finish. You are worried about the demographic issues. Well, this is really something to be worried about. If Israel will be flooded by millions of refugees, people that are 5 generations away from the war, we can close the project that is called Israel. But when it comes to the future of the Palestinians, I mean, some of you sincerely care about the human rights of the Palestinians, and I think you should care about this. I care about this. I care about the fact that my neighbors will have a better future. But what I realized is that doing this unilateral divorce just doesn't work. And this is where I get into the major word I would like to speak about in my lecture. And this is the major word. The way to change things in the Middle East goes through this word. Values. What are the values that your society respects? I think Israel is a society that is basically about sanctity of life. If you're asking me what is the major thing that Israel stands for, I think it's about sanctity of life. One of the things Israel was memorized historically on a global level was the Entebbe operation. You're too young, but how many of you have heard the Entebbe operation? Wonderful. So you're a very impressive crowd. Very good. The Entebbe operation was basically way before terror was all around the world, way before Europe was having terror attacks every single week, way before 9/11. This was a small country that was sending very brave soldiers all the way to Uganda, all the way to Entebbe, in order to make sure that every person that was hijacked just because he was a Jew, just because terrorist organizations, Germans and Palestinians together, were combining their powers in order to make sure that those people will die, giving them the ability to have freedom again. And the Entebbe operation, as someone said, it looked more like a Hollywood script. It didn't look like something that can happen in reality. But Israel was challenging the rules in order to have this, the values, the sanctity of life. And I think we have it all across. 2 years ago, when I was, as a deputy foreign minister, I was really honored to go all the way to Hong Kong in order to receive a UN award. It doesn't happen very often that the UN gives an award to Israel, but it was the World Health Organization that was giving us to be the first place in the world of having missions to help people in a disaster area. And we did that in Haiti, in Nepal, now just right now in Mexico. We did that in Japan. Israel is the first delegation that sends doctors, sometimes engineers. This is after earthquakes. Create new resources for water, like desalination. But we're also speaking about very blessed water countries like Brazil, of how to learn water management. So those countries are coming to Israel in order to learn the water issues. And we have this amazing technological event that is called WADEC, that people from all around the world are coming to learn about water solutions. The poverty issue. Part of the poverty issue is actually about a bigger issue that is called food security. And Israel is really one of the pioneers in this issue of food security and finding agriculture solutions to places in Africa and even in Asia in order to make sure that you can make more from what you got. So Israel is also playing on this ground. Terrorism, very clear. Israel was maybe one of the first countries was speaking about radical Islam as a main threat of the Western society. And this is where we definitely have many things in common with European countries today. This is one of the biggest issues today with Europe is the counterterrorism dialogue. And Israel is really helping European countries to make a real good balance between keeping human rights and still keeping terrorism away. Now, this is not an easy thing. Let me give you an example. It's not a pleasant thing to walk into American airport. I need to take off my shoes, my jacket. They look at all my bags. This is not a pleasant thing. They actually pretty much interfere into my private space. And think about it, they do it only in order to save my life. And this is something that Israel is experiencing for so many years that I think that we even minimize the human rights harm on our airports. The problem of health. I'm always having this quick questions to Israeli high school kids. I'm asking them, what are 3 export fields? And there is always one that says oranges, which is very cute, but we don't export oranges anymore. You're too young even to laugh about this joke, because Israel started her way with big oranges. I'm coming from a city of oranges, which is really an amazing thing to grow up next to. Pardes, how do you say Pardes? Okay. So the first and top thing that Israel is exporting is actually medicines. So we're definitely one of the leading countries in biotech, in all the issues that are dealing with diseases, with new diseases. And I'm also coming from the city of the Weizmann Institute, which is also very famous for its scientific achievements. The last thing we have is racism. And I think racism takes us back to the values. Whether we believe in values like equality. Israel was a country that was based on equality. The best proof is the fact we are the pioneers, after India, of having a woman prime minister. It was Indira Gandhi and Golda, pretty much at the same time, that could have led the world by a feminine presence in Israeli politics. And I must say that even today, America, that is so much leading into feminist discourse, still didn't have her first woman president. And I think it says something. It says something about the fact that taking all those issues, Israel is always there. And being part of Israel, I think, and I would say, it's part of the 21st century solutions. And I think this is what makes us such an amazing country, that even though we were trying to get peace agreements with all our neighbors, we're trying to achieve normalization with the Arab world. And this is where I'm trying to answer to some of the other questions that were asked here. Normalization with the Arab world. Israel got very close to their Arab neighbors because of the Iranian threat. The biggest threat today on the Arab world is Iran getting nuclear weapons. And this is why our cooperations got closer. And I think that the issue around the Arab normalization is not the Palestinians. It's not this issue. This is another issue, but this is not the biggest issue. I think the biggest issue is really to get rid of the concept that they need to understand that Israel is here. It's not going to change. They're not going to change this reality that Israel is part of the map of the Middle East. This is part of a bigger public opinion that is changing very slowly in the Arab world. But I think we can get there. Slowly but surely we can get there. Today what makes the relations close is more about interests than values. And I'm hoping to the day where it's going to be values, not just interests. Even though with most of the world you're basing your diplomatic relations on interests and not on values. There was a question about intermarriage. It was Ricky that asked it. It has nothing to do to anything of what I said about the amazing things that Israel is doing. It's more about identity questions. I'm a religious Orthodox woman, and I'm thinking to myself, in the 21st century, the question that every Jew should ask himself is, what makes me a Jew? What makes me a person that wants to define himself as a Jew? And one of the most fundamental things in Judaism is the fact you can either marry a Jew or marry someone who's not a Jew, but he will join Judaism. And I think those two options are good. But the third option, which means for me assimilation, is something that me on a personal level think is something sad. I think when you're growing your children with no Jewish identity, eventually you're losing it. And I think that the Jewish heritage is something so big and so amazing that it's not a thing that you should just give up easily. And it doesn't mean you can't marry someone that wasn't Jew to begin with. This is what's good about Judaism. It's not about racism. You can convert. You can become part of the Jewish people. Actually, our great king in the history, David HaMelech, was a son of a woman that converted and joined Judaism, the amazing woman Ruth. And I think that in general, this is my personal approach. Of course, Israel is a Jewish state, but it's also a democratic state. And in Israel, I'm always saying everyone can marry whoever they want. But this is more on a Jewish identity level kind of question. What else did you ask? Americans' involvement, very good. I think that the most important thing is the connection to Israel. I don't think anything is as good as just coming and visiting all the time, to experience it, to feel the vibe. Israel is a country that keeps on inventing itself. Things are always new things that are happening. Just to be in touch, I think, and to understand the Israeli atmosphere, because I think it's very different than what is happening here. And I think as long as you experience it, you can feel it in your heart, and then you can deliver a better message. I think we had all the questions done. Now, if anyone has more questions to ask, great, wonderful. And this is the most important thing, to have an open dialogue with Israelis from all the spectrum. Please.
My name is Nathaniel, and I'm a third year studying history. A Ma'ariv article that has you quoted as saying that the Reform and conservative denominations that they stripped Judaism of substance. I was wondering if you could speak to that quote.
Yes, I said that 2 days ago in the IAC conference, and I would like to tell you what I meant. Many people think that Judaism equals Tikkun Olam. It has become an easy way when you take values of liberalism in the way you understand liberalism, and you say, this is Judaism. And I think that in many ways, it's erasing 3,000 years of history. You can't just take a modern concept. And it's okay to take a modern concept and to say, I can find it in Judaism. That's absolutely okay. Definitely Tikkun Olam is a beautiful thing. We're all into Tikkun Olam. All the things that I just mentioned are basically Tikkun Olam. What is Tikkun Olam if not to define the problems that humankind is dealing with and to find them solutions and to be busy with that? I think this is the best Tikkun Olam that can be made. Israel is about Tikkun Olam. But to make Judaism just about this, and to say anything else is not important, any other value is not important, in many ways I think this is narrowing Judaism into very, very thin strip. And I think Judaism is much bigger. This is what I meant. People that didn't ask yet, I'm sorry. Yes?
You were talking before...
What's your name?
Yeah, sorry. I'm
Yeah.
Yoni.
Yoni?
I'm a junior. You were talking before about Palestinian right of return and how Palestinians seem to be the only people who leave their land and then expect to come back after, whereas like other refugees get absorbed. So I was wondering how that compares to like Jews who, I guess after 2,000 years, do have a right to return to Israel.
Nothing is similar. Jews had a national state here. We had nationality, we had kings, we had history. Anyone knows about the Palestinian history? There was never a Palestinian state. There was never in history a Palestinian king. There was Ottoman Empire, the Turkish Empire that controlled this land, just like the British Empire, but they were colonialists. They knew they were not part of this region when it comes to history and heritage and all those things. The city of David is a beautiful place that shows all the history that Jews had in Jerusalem. We never left this country. We were exiled from this country. We had political history there by the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim, Malchut Hashmonai. Totally different, totally different. Yes.
Hi, I'm Amina Sahib in the politics department. I'm a junior.
I didn't get that, just your first name.
Amina.
Amina.
So you mentioned that a major Israeli value is respect for the sanctity of life.
Right.
Which I find very admirable and appropriate, especially for people who live with the shadow of the Holocaust in their minds. However, I want to cite some stats given by the Human Rights Watch that for every 24 conflict deaths in Israel-Palestine, 23 of those are Palestinians. And in the latest conflict in 2014, there were 1,492 dead civilians on the Palestinian side, as opposed to 36 Israelis. So I was hoping you may be able to address Israeli policy, which, at least looking at the statistics, suggests that Palestinians are being inherently disenfranchised and injured, especially as Palestinians don't have a real centralized government and don't have a means of recourse for these abuses.
First of all, Israel's policy is very clear: minimize harm in civilians all the time. And I think that when we're fighting terrorists, we're quite proud of it. Some of our wars are against terrorists. Hamas is a terror organization. We're very proud to fight terror organizations, just like America was fighting Al-Qaeda. And about harming civilians, let's just use the numbers. Do you know where was the biggest Arab population that got killed in the last few years? Where was the biggest Arab population that was slaughtered very brutally? Syria, of course. The Syrians, we're speaking about 500,000 Arabs that were killed by their own leader. We're speaking about babies. We're speaking about women. Israel was opening its hospitals for children from Syria. Israel is still opening her hospitals in the south in order to give cure to Palestinian children. We are definitely in a horrible region, but Israel is not the country that is killing civilians. This is the most important thing that you must remember. Now, about the casualties and the numbers. Throughout 100 years of conflict, do you have any idea how many Palestinians were killed? We're speaking about 500,000 Arabs, Syrians, getting killed in Syria in less than 5 years. How many Palestinians were killed during the entire conflict, 100 years of conflict? How many Palestinians were killed? Do you have any idea? Okay.
5,000-6,000.
No, more, 22,000. And,
But you're also trying
wait a
to
second, and the same on the other side, the Israelis.
thousands
Wait a second.
of people.
And the thing is that during wars, unfortunately, people get killed. To those of you who study history, how many Japanese were killed by the Americans on the attacks on Tokyo? Do you remember the numbers? It's fair. A lot is a good answer, but if to be more specific.
250,000.
Some people say 250,000. I will take the more minimized number that everyone is agreeing on. 100,000 people were brutally killed in Tokyo. What does it mean about the American powers? Does it mean that they brutally killed civilians? No, it was a war. It was a war of people that were fighting about the freedom of humanity. And the thing is that if you compare the numbers in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, if you are comparing it to every single war that the Western societies were handling in the last 70 years, Israel will always get the best result of minimum harm for civilians. And the most important thing, unfortunately, We were attacked time after time from Gaza. I wish we weren't. Israel is not controlling Gaza. Israel don't have settlements in Gaza. Israel don't have Israeli soldiers in Gaza unless they have to go there in order to fight the terror tunnels. And I think that for many people that want to help Palestinians, I think they should start with change the regimes. Change those horrible regimes that abuse human rights, that abolish human rights, that don't give the children education, that they can't make it all the way to Princeton, those children. Israeli child can go all the way to Princeton. And the reason is their own leadership. I never deny the fact they have a horrible leadership that don't give them a future, but fight their leadership. Don't fight the Israeli leadership. Israeli leadership is willing to give everyone equal rights and equal future. Last two questions, and yes.
Okay. Do you view the IDF's participation in the Sabra and Shatila massacre as fitting in with the idea of minimizing harm to civilians?
Everyone knows that the Sabra and Shatila was in Lebanon by people, Lebanonian, killing each other. Now, one of the things I can't even imagine is how you can go and say Israel is in charge of killing people when Israel was not involved. This is a murder where Israelis were not involved. Excuse me. Yes. Please.
I'm Narek, and I'm sophomore here, and I'd like to bring back to your point about education. So in Princeton and other great educational institutions, before even we start learning, we really are ready for this idea of being challenged, for this idea of being wrong or learning something new, learning something we really did not expect before. And I would like to know how saying that the Palestinians did not have a history or bringing other statements like this open an area or a stage for education or a stage for dialogue for which education could be built later.
Rabbi Eitan, I didn't get to hear all the details of the questions.
Summarize it and repeat.
Yes.
Yes.
I would like, so my point is that in order to be open to discussion, we need to make statements which are discussable and around which people are ready to make dialogue. And we start in a point where we are ready to change our opinions, we are ready to change our views. While when we say things like some people did not have history or this is our land and this is not open to discussion, by definition we really are not opening it up to discussion. So I would like to know how we can build education on top of this.
Okay. Okay. Is America the land of Americans? Is France the land of French people? Is Japan the land of Japanese? Is Germany the land of Germans? Is Australia the land of Australians? British people that came all the way and got to Australia. How come Israel is the only country in the world singled out by having this question? No one is questioning the fact Australians belong to Australia, even though it's a new country. It's not 3,000 years old, just like Israel. Possibly explain to me how come you challenge this question only about the only Jewish state in the world? This is the thing that I can't get it. Why America belongs to Americans more than Israel belongs to Israelis? Why? Yes, you have an answer for my question?
Yeah, or I guess a challenge. I mean, in America, you can move to America and become a citizen, but in Israel, you can only move to Israel and become a naturalized citizen if you're already a Jew. So it's pretty different.
If you're born here in America, you're a citizen, and Israel does not have that law.
Really? Okay.
Immigration laws are completely different.
Okay. You're challenging the idea of a national state. You're right. America is not a national state, but Germany is, Japan is, Britain is, and the thing is that you need to ask yourselves again. Why is that okay that Germany will be the country of the German people? Oh, of course, you can immigrate. Yeah, there are many ways to immigrate to Israel also. As you know, there are many people in Israel that are not Jews. We have million Arab Israelis that have full rights, full citizenship. So again, I'm asking you, why are you challenging the right of Israel to be a country of the Jewish people while you're not challenging any other country in the world? By the way, some of them countries that really did horrible things when it comes to colonialism. Yes.
A couple of things. Firstly, the distinction you're making is one of Germany as a country for the Germans, Australia as a country for Australians, Israel as a country for not Israelis, but specifically Jews. So
No, excuse me. There are a million people in Israel, over a million people in Israel that are not Jews. They are full citizens. This is a matter of fact.
Right, but you're not giving an equal accessibility to that process, the way that Zora was saying. as you are to that for other countries.
Many people want to immigrate to Israel. And the truth is, most of the people that want to make a full immigration, they're able to do that. Till today, I didn't have this sense that someone really wants to be an Israeli citizen and couldn't make it unless he's involved with terror. This is something we can't allow. There are certain things in our citizenship law that says whoever can and cannot be a citizen, but you know something? Did you ever try to be an American citizen? It takes you years after years. Some of you were born here, they didn't went through the process, but I'm thinking about many people that are immigrating to this country. This is not an automatic thing to become a citizen of any state in the world. Yes.
I'm Isabel, and thank you for listening to me because I have obviously been disagreeing with what you say.
That's great.
Yeah, so thank you for listening. But I was wondering how you reconcile the idea that values are very, very important. I mean, good, values should be important and Israel should have good values. However, at the same time, you have apartheid established in Israel. And so how is that reconciled with values? And as well,
I was waiting for this question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and also, how do you reconcile values when all of your arguments being, well, they're doing worse, so I can do.
No, those are not my arguments, by the way. I'm just asking you.
The U.S. bombed U.S. bombed Japan, so we can have fewer casualties, and it's okay.
No, what I'm trying to say, first of all, about the apartheid question, which is, I think, without that, I can't say I've been to campus. Israel is a democratic regime. This is why I'm not excited. I'm so excited that everyone can ask whatever they want. It's very clear that all Israeli citizens have equal rights. Now let me show you how simple it is. The third size party in Israel is an Arab country, an Arab state, an Arab party. And the people, some of the people that are part of this party are people that are calling to destroy Israel. I don't know any parliament in the world that can tolerate that. Israeli parliament is tolerating that. Israeli Supreme Court has an Arab judge. I think that when you're asking the Arab population in Israel where they have the best future, they're answering in Israel. They know they have the best future they can dream of because they can have the same future that my children are going to have. They can go to Israeli universities, they can go to Israeli high-tech companies, they can be part of the government, they can be part of the Israeli Supreme Court. What's about that is apartheid regime. I just want to remind you, the apartheid regime in South Africa was when minority took over the majority of the people and didn't give them the very basic rights. In Israel, every person has all the full political and human rights that are accessible to my children. And I love to say my children because there's no one in the world that would like to have better life than my children. So it's so simple. The idea of apartheid is coming, I would say, from a propaganda. And it's okay. It's okay, just base it on the facts. And it's not based on facts. And the only thing I'm expecting from you is to base your arguments on facts. Okay, it will be the last question because we need to finish. And the only thing I'm going to say is that if you are interested in any more information about Israel, we're going to leave to Rabbi Eitan those books about Israel's history, about Israel's fighting terrorism, about our connection to the land, and the years we've been trying to reach peace agreements. So you can have the whole information. Problem of the Palestinians?
I mean, I understand that you are of the opinion that refugees ordinarily don't return to their historic homelands, but given the particular situation that many Palestinian refugees believe that their homeland belongs to them still, this is still their home.
Okay.
And you could argue that it is a matter of a Jewish state, but they have personal ethnic history, if not political history.
Okay, so it's very simple. The people that are calling themselves refugees are not refugees to begin with. There are Palestinians that live in Lebanon, Palestinians that live in Jordan. There are people that are part of the Arab world and they should get full citizenship in Jordan, in Lebanon, in Egypt, wherever they are, they need to be part of the country they went to. Now, the idea that you don't accept the existence of Israel, time after time, you start wars against Israel. And you can't accept the consequences of those wars. No time in history where this is how the humankind reacted. Think about it. They're trying to destroy Israel. And you want to give them a prize for them? I mean, it's ridiculous. They need to be full citizens in where they live. The Arab world, you should demand from the Arab world, hug your brothers. They're brothers, right? Some of them are originally from the region, from Egypt or from Jordan. They need to make sure they will have decent life where they live, not to be in refugee camps. This is ridiculous to be in a refugee camp after 70 years. Think about the refugees that came from the Holocaust to Israel. They put them in temporary houses, but after 2, 3, 5, 10 years, they were all people that could live decent life in Israel. Their children, their first generation, reached every single field in Israel of success. Some of them become business people, some of them like myself. I'm married to a third generation man of Holocaust survivor. My husband is a lawyer, is an entrepreneur. He's part of the Israeli gang. I'm a daughter of immigrants. I went all the way to the Israeli government. I was the youngest member of parliament. This is when the country is offering a full rights to everyone. This is when a country is offering a good future to everyone. But in the Arab world, unfortunately, you can't see that yet. You can't see women like myself reaching parliament at the age of 30. You can't see that. This is where your argument should really go to. Why there are not democratic Arab countries. Why they don't have freedom for women, for all the people in the world. Why? Those are the questions that the academic world should ask, not to start and say that Israel is not democratic enough. So democratic that some people can even say those ridiculous things that have nothing to do to the fact. Yes?
This is a quick follow-up question, because you've mentioned many times how you wish that you see the Palestinians as your neighbors, and you wish
they are my
like
neighbors.
which is wonderful. So my question is, for you, like as a member of Knesset with a lot of power, what are you doing to help? And also, how can you expect a better future for Palestinians if Israel does annex the West Bank, Yehuda Shomron? Like, what does that look like for you, and how are you going to use your power to help make that future happen?
First of all, I think that at the moment we're still speaking about a transformation in values where the Palestinian society should go through, and this is what I said. My biggest effort is to convince, I'm in the foreign ministry, I'm convincing Americans, Europeans, all the people that are contributing so much money for organizations that do BDS, organizations that are denying the right of Israel to exist, to make transformation in their taxpayers' money and to say, put that in education, put that in resources to have the next generation to have a better future. It was Hillary Clinton that was saying, they're poisoning the minds of the young children. It wasn't me. So every American that went into the peace process, his first conclusion was, first of all, stop poisoning those children. And I think this is where all the international effort should go to. Stop poisoning the minds of those young children. We're speaking about a national television that is getting money from the taxpayers of the world. People are paying for that. That is teaching children how to stop. This is so sad. The last terror attacks that Israel went through was the children intifada. There was 12 and 13 children involved, stabbing people in the streets. Some of them were causing real damages, and and loss of life of innocent people. We should really condemn that, and the Palestinian Authority is not just not condemning that, they're actually glorifying those terrorists, those young people that are becoming murderers, and they're becoming heroes in the Palestinian Authority. They're naming squares and schools after them. They're not denying that. And I think this is the big tragedy. So my effort is to put all the international help to good Palestinian education. I think this is where the money should go to. Not keeping them in refugee camps. It's ridiculous. 70 years, get over it. 70 years, it's time for you to build positive agenda to your society. I want to see the first Palestinian Nobel Prize. I want to see that. I want to see the first Palestinian child that will say, I want to make startup in order to create something good and big in the world, in order to solve one of those things. This is where we should put all the efforts to. Okay, thank you so much for listening.
Hotovely, thank you so much for coming. Thank you all so much for coming, for participating, for your vigorous participation. It's great to be here in Princeton. Proud of you all. Love you all. Have a great night.